Hello, everybody. It's Susan again. This time we're looking at the Capricorn full moon, the second time around. We already took a look at the general meaning of the full moon in a recent video, and also the previous full moon in Capricorn, which was at 1 degree of Capricorn. And now we're finishing the sign of Capricorn. It's at 29 degrees and 8 minutes of Capricorn. And that's coming up on Sunday, the 21st of July. So that's pretty much for everyone that it'll happen on Sunday. Often there's a bit of a lag, but this time it's pretty much for everyone on the 21st of July, this Sunday at 11:17. I use Greenwich Mean Time simply because that it allows everybody all around the world to figure out the time in their own time zone. So you can do that calculation yourself. Now, I want to emphasize before I go sign by sign that this is a significant awakening or awareness or a culmination point for this 29th degree, particularly at this time, because it's going to be really the last time that we have any interaction with Pluto around this point for our lifetimes. And there's a number of things that I want to call back so that you can look in your own lives and also collectively at what's been going on and like literally what has been going on. I looked back for the last new moon, and it was in January. So the 11th of January, we had the new moon, and you can consider this to be a kind of a culmination point of January, which was already pretty interesting in and of itself, January 2024. So let me point out a few things that are to be considered if you'd like to reflect back on your own experience or what's been going on around the world since January, but also over the last few years. First of all, that January new moon was at 20 degrees. So we're not exactly coming to the culmination point. This is not exactly the same lunar cycle. I'm just using the reference of the this sort of 6-month cycle of the new and full moons. And by the way, this, I've mentioned it before, but this is part of the resetting because we now have 2 full moons in the same sign. We're now resetting this unusual and slightly awkward from an astrological point of view sync that was lacking in the year and a half previous to this, where we would have had a full moon in one sign followed by a new moon, where typically it's easier for us to find the symbolism when we have the new moon and then followed by the full moon in the same sign. So now we're back on track. So as of now, and for about the next year and a half, we at least have a little bit of symbolic resonance that we can grapple with a little bit easier than we have been for the last year and a half. And I think, symbolically, these things matter because if we look at the last year and a half, it has been really out of sync. We've just been in a complete, it's been a shit show, let's face it. So here we are collectively and individually going through quite a lot of change, quite a lot of things that represent a major shift in our collective responsibilities and our individual responsibilities. And that's kind of the symbolism there between the Cancer and Capricorn axis. So think about that in terms of your emotional needs, your individual needs, your taking care of yourself, and also what are the responsibilities that you have in a worldly setting or in terms of your just general responsibilities. And it will always relate back to family, always relate back to that energy of personal life or your private life and your worldly or outer life. And now this is also, broadly speaking, in a sign-based square to the nodes. And that has also been a big tension over this past month. So this lunar month. And so there has been quite a lot of collective tension as well as the sun has been squaring the nodes for this past month while the sun has been in Cancer. And that always creates a certain amount of tension. When something is squaring the nodes, there's a really big dynamic shift. There's a need for things to change in a very big way. So let's have a look again, as I mentioned, on to the previous situations where we can go back and trace a little bit of our experience with this famous degree, the anaretic or sort of critical degree of Capricorn at 29 degrees, where we find the moon. At the same time as this moon, I just want to draw in Mars because Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and it's interesting to follow Mars when there is a lunation. So first and foremost, at least in Capricorn, or when there's anything going on in Capricorn, we want to look at what's going on with Mars. So first and foremost, the moon is not happy when it's in Capricorn, simply because it's ruled by Saturn. And the moon is about a certain amount of rasa, or juiciness, this kind of fullness and nurturing quality. And Saturn is drying, it's cold. It's very professional, it's very responsible, but it's difficult to access feelings and emotions. There's a practicality about it, which is good to rely on, but it's not very nurturing. And so this is now, as we're going into this full moon, in a trine to Mars. And more importantly, Pluto is in a trine to Mars, which has just entered into Gemini. So that's why I wanted to focus on this Mars, because if we go back to 2022, you'll remember that Mars was in Gemini for a very long time. And that was from the 20th of August, 2022, so almost exactly 2 years ago. And then it left on the 25th of March, 2023. And that's significant because Mars was just moving into Cancer as Pluto was moving out of Capricorn in March of 2023. So those are the other dates I'd like you to think about. March of 2023 is quite significant. Something really powerful shifted in your life. So between March and June of 2023. But if we go back to December 2022 through till roughly March, February, March, then Pluto was lingering around the 20th and 29th degree of Capricorn. So what we're looking at now, collectively and individually, is a culmination of something that happened, let's say at the least a year and a half ago, perhaps up to 2 years ago, where there was a big shift and a need for adjustment. And you can go back to my Mars and Gemini video, which stands alone because it's a symbolism of Mars and Gemini and Mars-Mercury aspects as well. So you'll find that on my channel. And I also did it, of course, in terms of the temporal transits as well. But that was from 2022. So go back and look for that one for more details. I won't have time to do another Mars and Gemini video because I really need to get my book done. That's my Mars and Gemini, getting my book done. And so my Mars is in Pisces, so it's squaring this, and it's going to put the fire under my feet to get this done. And so we have this current trine between Pluto and Mars, which is adding a dynamism to this full moon, which recalls a lot of the energy that was shifting between 2022 and 2023. So again, in 2023, once Pluto went back into, or rather first ingress into Aquarius, March, April, May, and just into the first, let's say, 10 days of June, that was a big shift. And what's important is that when that happened, let me just get the exact dates there. Yeah, no, that was this year. Oh my God, there's so many things. Let's stick with 2023. Hang on. 2023, we're talking about last year. So when that happened, we had this big shift. And then Pluto had to, of course, continue its 2-year journey over roughly the same 2 degrees. It's a long, slow movement of Pluto. And so we had then Pluto going back into Capricorn, and that was from June until January 2024. So look back last year, 2023, June until January, and try to understand what was finishing up after 16 years. Now, I've said this in another couple of videos. It's really a culmination of a big, long cycle that we're in here. And that's why there's a real degree of intensity. When things are at the anaretic degree, the last degree of a sign, it's coming to a culmination of that sign, and there's an extra intensity, and there's also an extra instability around that energy as well. So this is a touchy point, let's say. Now, go back over your own experience of the last 2 years, or certainly the last year, and see how this might be speaking to you now. Then we come to 2024, January 2024, when we had that new moon in Capricorn, 20 degrees of Capricorn, and that was on the 11th of January. And then on the 20th and 21st, depending on the planet and depending on where you lived, we had first Pluto, and then very quickly after, a few hours after, we had the sun moving into 0 degrees of Aquarius. Do you remember that? That's like, it feels like 100 years ago. So January 20th, 21st of 2024, we had the sun moving in with Pluto into this new air energy. And on that day, at the time of that ingress of the sun and Pluto, 21st of January 2024, we had the moon exactly where Mars is at this full moon. So the moon ingressed Gemini, and we had then the moon and the sun and Pluto conjunct moving into Aquarius. So trining each other, creating this whole new big story. When Mars is trining, it gives a dynamism, it gives a direction, and it can be extremely constructive. It feels like energy that's coming through in a positive way, in a constructive way. Now, I always have to emphasize that in a world chart, when we're looking at mundane astrology, that's not going to be as graceful. It just never is. On an individual level, these things can be extremely useful, really, really graceful. I'm not going to go into mundane astrology at this point. I just want to keep this personal for the 12 signs. So, but I want you to have a think about these dates as we go through. I'm not going to recall them sign by sign, so so keep that in mind as I go through this this sequence. Let me just check my notes to see there was something else that I wanted to mention. Yeah, so Mars currently, as it's just ingressing now, on the heels of this full moon, it's actually just before. It would be on the 20th, so Saturday for most of us, Saturday the 20th of July, Mars ingresses Gemini, and it stays there until the 3rd or 4th of September, depending on where you live, when Mars will then move into Cancer, and that's where it's going to stay for a very long time, because it's going to be retrograding just into the 6th degree of Leo. I'm going to come back and talk to you in another video, probably in 2 or 3 weeks' time, because I really need to get myself isolated and working on my book. And so you won't be seeing me for a little while after this one. I'm just about to catch a plane to Dublin, actually. Packed my stuff and I'm ready to go. So this is just to give you a heads up, because Mars will be, as of the early part of September, moving into Cancer at the same time that Pluto moves back into the 29-degree point, beginning of September. And I think the date exactly is the 2nd or something like that. Forgot to check that. But let's say the first couple of days of September will be quite edgy, because there again is going to be quite a big shift of energy. And Mars doesn't like to be either in Gemini or in Cancer. It's not so comfortable there because it's unstable energy. Mars it has difficulty being direct. It's a little bit all over the shop. It's great for in Gemini, it's great for engineering and logical work and things like that, working to create things, working to establish things. But it's not so helpful when you have a dynamic around something that needs something direct that is going to be graceful. That can be a little bit all over the shop. But again, I'll talk about that maybe when I come back to the Mars in Cancer reference. There's so much going on now. I'm trying to tie up all these loose ends. The other aspect, of course, at this full moon, before we get to the sign by sign, is that there is a trine here between Mercury and Chiron, and Mercury and Aries, which is even tighter. And Mercury is at 26 of Leo, and Chiron is at 23 of Aries. Now, Chiron is going to retrograde around this degree point, so it's really slow and very powerful at this time. So we're now getting this slow-moving Chiron that is ready to station retrograde in just a few weeks, and then we're going to get it moving back to 19 degrees, where it was at the time of these eclipses. Oh, that's the other thing. Here's another date for you. So the 20th of April, 2023. In my last video, I said 2022. I'm sorry, I've lost track of time. I also lost all my data, so I couldn't recall the file. 20th of April, 2023 was the eclipse that happened at 2952 or 54 of Aries. And that was the first eclipse that introduced the cycle of the Aries and Libra axis, where the nodes are now currently moving through. And why that's important is because the moon is currently squaring that. And that's where Pluto will be coming back to square, meaning there's more tension in terms of, and that was, Pluto was squaring that. So there's more tension in terms of whatever was going on in April of 2023 that you will need to somehow adjust to, or that will need to be redressed or closed off or finalized. It's going in the direction of the North Node generally, because we look for where the movement is sort of in the general direction of the North Node. And that means that it's something that you need to do for yourself that's different, that's unique, and that's based on your individual needs or your individual motivations, ambitions, you could call it. And of course, ambition is a keyword for both Mars as well as Capricorn. Drive, ambition, goals, that's why Mars is exalted in Capricorn. And that's why I keep tying this Mars into this lunation. So something to think back on. I think we're done now with all of these dates. That's it. The last thing I want to say is, oh, and no, we're not done with the transits here. So the trine here, we have a trine from the Sun to Neptune. It's a lovely water trine, very harmonious, but also can be confusing. It can be something that sets us up in a way that feels unstable, unsupported, unsettled, potentially. And that Neptune is still in its broad trine. It's a sextile, rather, with Pluto, which is just ongoing for our lifetime for quite some time. And then also it's in a very, very tight trine to the moon, sextile to the moon. So it's sextiling the moon, trining the sun. And it's something that requires our reflection, because what we may be considering or thinking or feeling may be amplified both by Pluto conjoining this moon and also by Neptune in a sextile to the moon and Neptune trining the sun. Ideally, the best case scenario is that this comes with a kind of an awakening energy. We have that potential where we have the Uranus, which is also in a broad sextile with Neptune. It's definitely within a degree, or for me, that's 3 degrees. It's just on the edge of acceptable, but I'm going to give it to it because we just had Neptune stationing retrograde, so it's still very slow moving at this time. And Uranus is also very, very broadly again in a trine to the moon. So things are shifting, unpredictable, maybe edgy, and difficult to pin down. So this is not a good time to make a new plan, to instigate something. A lot of planets out of dignity. In fact, I don't think there's one in dignity. And so there isn't indeed not one planet in good dignity, and that you would like to have that, and particularly, especially the moon in good dignity when you start something, depending on what you're looking to do. But then the last thing is, of course, that there's a square between Uranus and Mercury, which can be deeply insightful, very creative. This can also be incredibly creative energy, especially on an individual level. You can use this energy for a vibrant understanding of something, or an urge to create something, an urge to move in a new direction. That's also what Mars in Gemini can be very good for, is this urge to create and generate something. It doesn't have to be long lasting. It can be something that's just for this moment, but still good. So we have a lovely, finally, a very nice so-called minor aspect between Jupiter and Venus, which is also very supportive, but it's not a big player at this time. They're not big players in this movement. But just to point out that we're moving now, as I'm doing this, it's the 18th of July, and we're moving now into eclipse season. This is 8 weeks out from the eclipse that's moving into with the very first axis of Pisces and Virgo. And so that eclipse is going to happen with the sun at 25 Virgo and the moon at 25 Pisces. And that's where the nodes will start to be moving into as of mid-January 2025. So we'll be talking a lot more about that, and I'll come back certainly with a video about these these shifting nodes, but also about the eclipses coming. But I'd like you to already get that in your frame of reference in terms of your life, your experience, where you can project a little bit forward, 2 months forward. It's probably about the only safe projection we can make. Longer than 2 months, just forget it. Even 2 months, I have my doubts. But let's just say that as we move into September, you're looking to really work with the energy of Pisces quite a lot. And that puts it in a sextile to Pluto, which will be in Capricorn. And of course, the energy will already be very much in Virgo, but the North Node itself is moving into Pisces, and that's why that becomes very interesting. So just keep that in mind. It's we're on our way to eclipse season again, where things will again shift in quite big, what you might even describe as conclusive ways, because the North Node going through the last sign of the tropical zodiac will also bring about a whole new, bigger cycle starting in January of 2025. All right. The other thing to consider, since I had to mention, oh God, where do I stop? So when we go into 2025, we're also going to get Uranus moving into that 0-degree point where Mars is now. I think that's worth noting and worth thinking about, because this could already presage what is coming with Uranus going into that that point, that 0-degree ingress of Gemini. The other thing, of course, is that we will have Pluto moving into those early degrees of Aquarius, and that will be a broad trine. So much of 2025 is going to be about a trine between Pluto and Uranus. And then Neptune and Saturn both will be moving into Mars-ruled Aries, the very first degrees, and then coming back later in 2025. We've got a lot to talk about later on, but I want you to just keep thinking ahead of these bigger shifts that are happening. There's quite literally a transfer of power. And don't think of that in the old paradigm of who's got the power, like which person has the power, but think of it as an energetic transfer, that there's something here around power. And with Pluto, we're always looking to find, where is my inner power? Where we're pushed from the outside, we have to come back to our inner power, because there's a lot of energy around manipulation, control, splitting. And this is that Pluto in Capricorn finishing up, and it's also the dynamic of Pluto in Aquarius, which is about breaking, splintering, and reconfiguring society and how we communicate and how we connect and how we share. So lots of room for growth, a lot of room for change. So think about that from the point of view of the power dynamic in your life, and then collectively observe it happening as well. Right, I think we're finally good. I just wanted to mention that this is also in the Indian tradition considered to be Guru Purnima. And this is the full moon or the Purnima of the Guru. And this is a time where we honor all of our teachers. We honor everyone who has brought us to this point. And that's something that we can remember, is we're never doing something on our own. We've never come to this place uniquely by ourselves. This is what the Buddhists would call dependent arising. Everything happens because of something else. So the Ubuntu sense of I am because you are. And Guru Purnima helps us to acknowledge that. And it's interesting that this is always around the time of this Cancer, tropically anyway, the Cancer sun and the Capricorn full moon. And so it's honoring those who lead, those who instruct, those who have authority, and those who protect as well. That's another Capricorn signature. So the inner guru is the one that we're aiming to get to. So we first find the outer guru, the one who shows us the way. Gu means darkness, heaviness, and ru means to leave, to remove it. It's a lot of Sanskrit is the root of our Indo-European languages, and so remove this darkness. And so we're waking up, we're opening up, we're aware now at the time of this full moon of all of the lessons that we've learned, all of the people who have taught us, And as my teachers used to say in India, that, if you're riding a donkey up a mountain, your donkey is your guru. So there's no hierarchy in terms of that. But sometimes we have an individual or a tradition that we consider to be our guru lineage. And so what you also want to do then is bring that energy within, and that becomes your own guiding light, that you become aware and you're guided from within, the inner guru, that this Swadhisthana, this place that is your own home, this understanding of yourself. And that's where we can also put some attention at the time of this full moon, where you start to bring in an awareness of where am I operating from my own best interests, my own wisdom, and am I able to then, take the teachings from others, regardless of the form that they come in. That sometimes the teachings come in surprising ways, and I take the teachings and absorb what I need and leave what I don't. And this is a good practice for life, but especially at the time when we honor our teachers and the gurus of all kinds. And unfortunately, the word guru has taken on a very negative connotation for very sad reasons, but we won't go into that. What I'm going to do now is go sign by sign, and I'm going to have to go backwards through the clock just to maintain the moon in the axis with Capricorn. So we're going to go backwards towards, just do it hour by hour. We're going to go backwards towards Aries, and we'll start with Aries just to make it easy. And so you're going to find that the degree points don't line up. So we're not going to pay attention to the degree points. You watch the introduction to see exactly where the moon is lining up at that 29-degree point of Capricorn. And so here we have for Aries, sun, moon, and rising sign. Of course, this is happening in your 10th house of career, always very important. And it's also how you show up in the world in general. What am I doing in my life outside the home, outside of my private arrière boutique, where I do things in my own private experience. And so you're looking at all of the different things that you want in terms of ambition and drive, career. It might be something to do with paid employment, but it can also be about vocation. How do I want to show up in the world? This also connects to social status. And so that can include marital status. And so since the South Node is in the 7th house for Aries, that can also mean that there's a change in marital status or a new way of showing up in relationship. If it's about business partners, then there's an opportunity to see something in business partnership that requires adjustment or that requires your awareness. And then whatever you need to do about that is what the next 2 weeks coming up are going to help you with, so that you can work with these next 2 weeks ahead to resolve or tie in the things that need to be done. Of course, the moon exactly conjoins Pluto just hours after the full moon, and that's moving into your 11th house, where Pluto has been already for the past year and a bit. And so you're really working towards a vision for your future. So think in terms of, how do I show up in the world, and what is my vision for the future, and how does that work for me? Try not to get too overly emotional or upset about things going on around you socially, or perhaps in your social group, your friends groups and so on. And try to have a sense of what is important in the long run, rather than getting tied down, perhaps being triggered by emotions in the short run, because you now have Mars, your ruler, in the 3rd house, and Mars in the 3rd house, it'll be there until first 3-4 days of September. And that can create some tension in conversations. It can make you a bit snappy. It can also be incredibly good for finding your goals and figuring out what it is you'd like to do, if that's not clear to you at this point. And so use that period of Mars in the 3rd house to really work on the details of things, work on the details of any business situation or any connections or correspondences that you might have, any kind of communication, anything online. And that's especially true for pretty much until June next year, because you've got Jupiter there as well. So a really lovely aspect. And in mid-August, we also have Mars conjoining Jupiter. So this new cycle ahead, when the sun moves into your 5th house of creativity, is going to be extra dynamic. And so if you work creatively, if you are a creative person, this is a great time for you. So it may not be about commerce, it may not be about business. It's a really good creative energy that you've got going here. So think deeply about how you show up, how you want to show up, what your ambitions are. And that will inform what's going on now when Mars goes into your 3rd. And then last but not least, you still have the North Node in the 1st house. And so that's always going to be calling back to yourself, taking responsibility. It's broadly trining Venus in your 5th. So it might have something to do again with creativity or children or relationships of an intimate nature, like love affairs and things like that. There's something new here that you're showing up in a new way. And so this can be extremely constructive also for you at this time. It's just a good time to take stock of how do I show up to the world around me, and how do I use Mars? And because for you, Aries, whether it's sun, moon, or rising, your Mars is kind of like a diplomat that works around the clock of the zodiac and shows yourself everywhere you go. It's kind of a symbol of you. So I think that's all we need to look at. Um, I think that's about it. I'll leave it at that because I think there's already enough going on in your 1st house, Aries, and I'll be back in touch with more information about Mars when it goes into your 4th house, because that's going to be squaring you and potentially causing some challenges around home or emotional things. Mars in the 3rd can also be something to do with siblings or cousins or your extended family. Yeah, so that can also be part of this story. I would need to, of course, look at your natal chart to see what's all going up there. There's the moon and Pluto will be in the house of the elder sibling. So if there is something going on with your elder sibling, that can be quite dynamic. But just keep your cool. I'll just leave it at that. So good luck, Aries, and I'll see you in the next video. So Pisces, this is happening in your house of the future and your vision for yourself, your vision for your life overall, social connections, how you show up with groups of friends, and online as well, things around what you do out in the world, but in a way that connects you to other people through networks and things like that. The 11th house is also gains from the thing that you do, so the money that you earn. So there might be something that you become aware of in terms of earned income, money that you're earning. You've got Pluto moving into the 12th, and soon after this full moon, the moon will conjoin Pluto there in the 12th. That Pluto is there for a long, long time. And the 12th house is also working with foreigners, foreign lands, working with money that comes from people, business partners, and business setups that are international or foreign. And of course, the 11th house is online in general as well, so that can also tie that in. And you had Uranus in the 3rd house since spring of 2018, so that probably is something that you've been doing a lot of as well since then, because with Uranus in the 3rd, there's a great connection there, that Uranian energy working online, working in communication, working and connecting with people in a different way, that Uranus. Now you have Mars in the 4th house. That's going to have a lot of dynamism around your family, around your roots, around your lineage, property. If there is something going on with property, it can represent something about working from home, especially because Jupiter is there, and Jupiter is your ascendant ruler. It's the ruler of Pisces. But it's also valid for Sun and Moon in Pisces. And look beneath the video. I always add in the video description what these represent, so you can always find out more below the video. And so we also then have this with Jupiter there in your 4th house, your ruler. It's going to be mid-August when it conjoins this Mars. And so something about what's going on at this full moon is going to show its there's something that you're going to be able to do about this. It's going to be an energy that brings change, because that will be also at around the time that Jupiter is squaring Saturn in your 1st house. So Pisces, this is a really big summer for you. Something quite dynamic is happening around home, around your emotional nature, around your psychological nature, stability, around all of those things, your sense of security, what you need to do about it, because Saturn is in the first house. And this can have something to do with family in general, because the North Node is in the second, which is about family and whatever supports you. But that's also the house of income, your valuables, your possessions, your stuff. So this is potentially also about how you manage your money and how you do that in a way that makes you feel secure, because Mars is ruling your second house from the fourth. We also have the sun in the fifth house at this time. So that's just leaving at the time of this full moon. So you've had that now this last month, and that would have been a time for reconnecting in a positive way, in a fun way, in a creative way with the people around you. And that's in a trine to you. That's a very positive flowing aspect. And so this would have been, for most of you, depends on your natal chart, but it would have been a very pleasant month to be connecting with people and to be working also on creative projects. So I think that's what we need to say for Pisces. That's the most important thing. Yeah, you have Mercury and Venus. Of course, Venus is the exaltation ruler of Pisces, so that's helpful to keep in mind. Venus is in the sixth house, and she is hang on a minute. Yeah, she's with Mercury for another week after this. So Venus and Mercury together in the sixth house, that's very creative energy. It's a really dynamic creative energy. And Mercury is in a square to Uranus in your third. So if you are working on creative projects or musical projects or projects that have to do with some kind of expression or writing, Mercury always represents writing, astrology as well. That is going to be a good time. So these next couple of weeks between now and the new moon coming up in early August, this is going to be a really good time for you to be very creative. All right, let's keep going backwards. Remember, we're going backwards in time. So here we go. We're going to now Aquarius, and Aquarius, this is happening in your 12th house. And that energy of the 12th house is your sort of secret spot, your secret place, your hidden aspects of life, or the intimate sense of self. It's bed pleasures as well. It's the things that we like to do behind the scenes, where people don't see what's behind our eyes, what's behind closed doors, what's far away, can be faraway lands as well. So this can also be something to do with how you earn money, because Saturn, which is ruling your 12th, and also ruling your first house, your ruler, Saturn, is in the second house. And Jupiter, which rules that Saturn, is in your fifth house of entrepreneurship. So if you are working for yourself, it's a really good dynamic time to be doing that. Keep in mind that Mars should be in Gemini. It's just that I'm moving backwards, because otherwise we lose the moon in Capricorn. So I just had to do it this way just to keep the basic theme of the chart. So that means, yes, you have Mars and Jupiter going into your fifth house at this time, and that's super dynamic. It's also very good if you want to connect with somebody, if you're involved in a love relationship or some kind of new business partnership. It can be very, very good. I wouldn't start something at this time if it's around business, simply because the moon is hidden and it's not in good dignity. And for things like this, you need to look at your chart, but you want everything to work in your favor. So Mercury is squaring Uranus. The moon is not in good dignity. So just saying, it's not a great time to be doing anything like that long term. So of course, Aquarius, you are really in the hot seat here. And what I was saying in the beginning of the video, if you didn't listen to that, please go back to about the first 20 minutes or so, because there's a lot of information there about what you need to understand about the last couple of years in order to really try and see clearly what this new moon, or rather what this full moon, is revealing to us at this time. And it has a lot to do with you, because Pluto is now moving into your first house, having been going back and forth between the 12th and the first house, really reconfiguring your life in a very big way. And especially as Saturn is in your second house of your values and what supports you and money and so on, This is a very key time for you to think big in terms of what might need to be understood. The 12th house also represents self-undoing and things that we might do that are not really working in our favor. It's sort of where we feel we can be our own worst enemy. So that's something to bear in mind at this time. Just reflect on that. So I think that's it for Aquarius. I'm going to leave it at that. And I wish you a lovely full moon realization. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks in the next video. So we come back now to Capricorn, and this is, of course, all about Capricorns because this is your full moon. This is your second full moon of the month. Now, remember that it should be at that 29th degree. You'll see that in the introduction to this video. So if you haven't, please go back to the first 20 minutes or so of this video because really that reflects on you very strongly and your experience if you are Capricorn, Sun, Moon, or Rising. So remember, the moon should be at 29 degrees. It's conjoining Pluto. So quite a significant shift for you, especially when it comes to who am I and who am I with regards to money and to my family. Also, second house is family. What supports you? It's all the things that we need to feel we can move on in life. And once we feel those basics are taken care of, then we can move into the third house and start connecting with people. And your ruler is in the third house, and it's in a retrograde right now. It's along there with Neptune. Again, watch the introduction to see how Neptune is influencing all of this. And so there may be some confusion around these things, around these questions of interacting with people, around things that might have to do with your neighborhood or where you live in general, or extended family. Again, so the second house is your close family, the third house is extended family, and the fourth house is your lineage. So that's the way I look at this in a general way, anyway. So there is a lot pulling Capricorns into that actual archetype of the Cancer Capricorn archetype. So you're really living this in this moment. Something is shifting around the work that you do, the career, the vocation, your ambitions, your goals. It's changing a lot. So Capricorn, think deeply about what was going on last summer, especially July, but already starting in April 2023, think really profoundly about what was changing for you then. Because that would have been a really key point of change, something to do with what you need, what your emotional and psychological needs or what your family needs are. Could be literally about property and the physical sort of location that you live in, based on the contrast, let's say, between that and what you're doing out in the world. So it's a really an interesting time for you to really sit back and reflect for Capricorn. You also have Mercury and Venus in your house of shared resources, and Mars has just moved into your sixth house. So in this particular configuration, Mars is still back in the fifth, but it's moved into the 0-degree point of the sixth house for you. So Mars in the sixth is super busy, dynamic, can have you really driven. Mars is really good for Capricorn. It can help bring clarity around what it is that you're trying to get to and what you need in terms of your working experience, and also based on what you want for the future, because Mars rules your house of the future and your vision for your future, or how you connect with people socially, but maybe based on a feeling of obligation or duty. Could that change for you? And Mars will be mid-August conjoining Jupiter. So that means that it's going to be an opportunity, I should think, for you, a good opportunity for you to gather up information or even take action on something new that has to do with work, or it has to do with your way of thinking around that, and particularly how you're setting your goals going forward. And that Mars is trining Pluto in the second, Mars from the sixth trining Pluto in the second, and soon also will be trining the south node and sextiling the north node. So again, for Capricorn, I'd like you to follow Saturn, your ruler, but also Mars, your exaltation ruler, to see what's going on in where you should put your attention in your life. So this can have something to do with your children. Of course, fifth house always represents children, where we have Uranus. It's been changing a lot. Mars is moving it from the house of children into the house of the sixth house of obligations. So you may find that there's something that you need to do that has to do with your children, that is pulling in a need for something to change around children. Mercury is also representing children. Jupiter represents children, and Mercury rules that Jupiter right now, and Mercury currently is in your eighth house. So shared resources and intimacy, emotional intimacy, psychological intimacy, sexual intimacy, not with your children, of course, thank you, but just in general. And so these can tie in as well. If it's about your marriage, this is something that is being revealed to you about what you need out of this partnership. So that's basically been the last lunar cycle. So from the 22nd of June, when we had that first full moon at the very beginning of your sign, the energy has been really starkly focused on relationships for you, because the sun has been in your seventh house, and twice it's been opposite the moon, and this time with Pluto. So maybe it's about you recognizing what you need and how you might need to reflect that back to your important partnerships, whether that be business or intimate. Doesn't really matter, because it's all kind of coming together at this time. Good luck, Capricorn. I'll see you in the next video. So we're going to keep going backwards, and now we've got, oh, hang on. Wait, sorry. There we go. We've got Sagittarius on the first house, and that puts the full moon in your second house. And Sagittarius having a moon in your second house is showing something about your resources. It can also be about your income or your family, something that supports you, or how you might need more support. It's about your values as well. And we've got Saturn in the fourth house. So I do think this has quite a lot to do with home and family lineage in general, how you might tie that into this moment and recognize what's been going on for you since last year. Because I forgot to mention at the beginning, God, there was so many things to say, but last year, March 2023, we also had Saturn ingressing Pisces, and Saturn rules your second house, rules your third house as well. And so think about that. All of last year, 2023, very, very much to do for you with house and home and family and lineage issues and emotional issues, psychological issues, things that need to be understood. You've got Uranus in your sixth for such a long time now, 6 years already, where you've had to really, or maybe 7 already, where you've had to really reflect on your day-to-day, your health, that can be your mental health or physical health, that certainly your work, how you work. And this is a significant time. Now we've got Mars. Please ignore the Mars in your sixth. It's actually in the seventh at the 0 degree point, with moving towards Jupiter, where it's going to meet up with your ruler, Jupiter, which is in your opposite sign until next June. So there's a lot of energy for you now on building new relationships, on looking towards others and getting benefit also from relationship of all kinds. That can be even therapeutic relationships. It can be having a better counselor, having a better advisor, having a better lawyer, a better therapist. So that's all the same as, any very important one-on-one relationship. But of course, most people are interested in their intimate life. And so when Mars goes into the seventh, that's the ruler of your fifth and the seventh. And so there can be a little bit more spiciness in your intimate life. And just be careful, because Mars in the seventh is in Gemini, is not in great dignity and can lead to a certain amount of combativity, where there's maybe too much coming from the other. There can be some tensions coming through them, although it can also be very dynamic. And depending on your chart, Sagittarius, even Sagittarians every now and then needs their batteries recharged by somebody else. And so you might find that having the Mars in the seventh is just the dynamic kick that you need. Again, that depends on your natal chart, but be careful, because it can also be sparks flying within relationships. So Mars, of course, as I mentioned, ruling your fifth house, that can also represent children. And so there can be quite a lot of dynamism in the lives of your children or around children. Your partnership and how that shows up around children as well. So again, tying in the family issues and your personal partnerships. So I think that's it for now, Sagittarius. So Jupiter will be squaring Saturn coming up in mid-August. So as Mars meets Jupiter, just a couple of days later, Jupiter is actually squaring Saturn in your fourth house, and it's ruling your fourth house. It's ruling your first house of self, your fourth house of home, and what keeps you grounded. So whatever's going on in relationship or new negotiations around contracts, because that can also be a business contract, for example, that you're deciding, or some kind of relationship that is more about employment or about how you work with somebody, not necessarily an intimate relationship. This is going to be the first, what we could call challenge. So work with that, because then it's coming back another time in November, I think it is. I can't remember the date off the top. So it's maybe October, where there's going to be another square. And that square is going to be then where there's a resolving or a deeper understanding of what this challenge means for you. And a challenge doesn't mean bad things. Challenge is what is required to make change. Remember, squares always require some kind of adjustment. And so it's an adjustment, and you're up for that. Being a fire sign, Sagittarius, you're always up for adjusting. Mutable fire does that very, very well. So make the best of it. I'll see you in the next video. So Scorpio, we have this happening in your third house of communication. The moon actually finds its joy in the third house. It's really happy there. And the sun happens to find its joy in the ninth house. So for you, around the time of these lunations of Cancer and Capricorn, it's actually pretty good energy. It works very well. And because Mars, your ruler, is also the exaltation ruler of your third house, or Capricorn, that's actually a really strong signature of recognizing some new goals or something that you need to change. Now, that can also involve your siblings, or it can involve some way of communicating, how you need to be in communication around something, or you have something reflected to you based on where the sun in the ninth is telling you something about your sense of your purpose, your higher purpose in life. And the third house is about the goals. How do I achieve that? How do I negotiate around that? How do I make that work? Now, I want you to ignore the Mars in the seventh. Mars has gone into the 0-degree point of Gemini at this point. It's because I'm moving backwards through the signs to keep the moon in Capricorn as we go here. So Mars is in your eighth house and is moving up towards Jupiter. Jupiter rules your money house. It's Jupiter also ruling your fifth house of pleasure, which is in a very nice trine to you, a trine to this ninth house that we're just talking about, of your vision for your life, higher learning, higher education, higher vision for life. And so there can be something really good happening here that might involve connections that are more intimate, that are more profound than you have had in the past, or that maybe there's been a bit of a dry patch and you're now coming out of that dry patch. Now, the moon is on Pluto. Go and look at the beginning, let's say 20-25 minutes of this video, where I explain quite a lot of what's going on here. And that moon on Pluto is really pushing into your fourth house of your personal sensitivities, perhaps your psychological or emotional needs, or even your material needs, because it's also ruled by Saturn in Aquarius there. And that is going to be for quite some time. So you're really, the last year, 2023, and this year, 2024, you're really putting a lot of focus on, what do I need going forward to feel this deeper stability in my life? Where do I want to live? How do I want to live? But it also affects two very important psychological houses. In fact, three of your psychological houses are impacted, because we also have the South Node, Ketu, in the 12th. So the fourth house of your psychological nature, your emotional nature, also your lineage, where you've come from, and the eighth house of your deeper psychological understanding, unconscious processes, or early childhood issues, secrets and things that are not easy to reveal to other people, or that you may not have revealed to yourself. That's also being aspected here, where we have this South Node transit of the 12th, where you might be able to shed some patterns of behavior or understandings. I find this extremely positive for Scorpio, to be able to really go deeper into understanding stuff around where you're blocked emotionally, psychologically, or spiritually, especially. And so this can be an incredibly revealing time. You have Uranus in a square to Mercury in the 10th house of your ambition and drive. And remember that Mars should be in your 8th house. And so Mars in the 8th can really have you digging down, drilling down deep into your psychological life, into your intimate life, and also money that you share with other people, especially as Jupiter rules your 2nd and it's in the 8th house. There's a lot of attention there. If there are quibbles and quarrels around either issues of contracts or whether that be professional contracts or contracts between partners, like a marriage, for example, or issues of inheritance or this kind of thing, bear with it. It's going to emerge in the beginning of September in a whole new light. So you may have to fight for something. You may have to struggle for something that would not be new to a Scorpio rising. So you've got this. So I'm going to leave it there, Scorpio, and I'll see you in the next video. So Libra, I'm going to now, let's tie this back into the actual chart because, oh, maybe I better not do that because, okay, Libra, you are the one that has the actual rising sign of this chart. So let me just pull that up. There we go. So we actually can use the proper chart for Libra here. And so Libra, you have this happening in your 4th house of home. You're quite a traditional person. Libra in general, depends on your chart, but Libras tend to like things in order, and that's because that Capricorn is on the 4th house. You're very responsible around family and home, lots of energy around that as well. And this moon is highlighting that, and there can be issues around changing the dynamics around your property where you live. This is for Libra rising or sun or moon. Moon always represents home, so especially if you have a Libra moon, but also particularly for Libra rising, where it will really show up more clearly. There can be some issues around partnerships and how that needs to, how that dynamic will affect where you live. Because you've got the North Node in the 7th, you've got the South Node in the 7th house of relationships, the person across the table from you, the other person, and the South Node in your 1st house. And so there's something here that shows up as what you need to let go of, what you need to stop doing, what you need to give up, walk away from, what you need to recognize is not a helpful pattern to get you where you want to go. And where you want to go at this point, or what you're realizing at this point, is you want that intimate security. You want that deep feeling of home, and you want that feeling of being in the comfort of your own space. So there's something changing dramatically around this time. The moon is soon after, well, just a couple of hours after this lunation, the moon is going to be conjoining Pluto. And so that's moving into your 5th house. So that's whatever the answer is, what do I need deep down? What do I need in my emotional understanding of myself, or what do I need to feel secure in this moment? That's coming from this place of a big change. It could be volatile emotions. It can be something that has you feeling extremely emotional, particularly because of that sextile to Neptune, where you may not be seeing very clearly because of the trine also to Uranus. Remember to take a breath. Don't assume that everything is your fault. That's often a default for Libra. Don't assume that you are responsible for everything. That certainly over the last 12 years or so has been a feeling that you've had. With Neptune in the 6th house, there may be a feeling of general culpability for things that have nothing to do with you, but you might feel like you have to give more to make it all work. So stop it. And then Saturn in the 6th also has you feeling that there's kind of an obligation here. There's a feeling of obligation for you, Libra, that you should really question. So the full moon here in the 4th is saying, what do I need? Am I meeting my emotional needs? And it's not easy with a moon in Capricorn, because that's often that feeling of being, let's just get on with it. Let's just do this in a practical way. And it's very easy to override the emotions. That's this kind of stiff upper lip kind of energy. So once the moon hits Pluto, forget the stiff upper lip. It's going to be trining Mars and completely transformed with Pluto. So figure it out before the moon is going to hit that. Take a heads up over the weekend, and don't engage, if you can avoid engaging in things that might lead to emotional drama based on things that are not necessarily true. So just keep that in mind. And here we have Mars in the 9th, along with Jupiter. Jupiter loves being in the 9th house. That's one of its favorite places in the chart. And Jupiter is there expanding your sense of what you're here for, expanding your horizons. And with Mars in the ninth, you feel really this extra ambition and drive, especially in the trine to Pluto. This is an incredibly positive, I feel, aspect for Libras of all kinds. Very positive aspect, but I would like you to really, really think about how you're feeling about things, what you genuinely need, and not only focus on what others need at this time. You do have the North Node in the seventh, so there's a lot of intentionality here at this time until January around a relationship, wanting to be in a relationship or partnership of some kind. So a lot of your energy is there. There's a lot of newness coming in for you as well, in a good way. With your ruler Venus in the 11th house, you might actually find yourself meeting somebody through friends, for example, especially when the sun moves in very strong dignity, just a couple of, again, the next day, let's say 22nd of July, we've got, or overnight, I think it is on the Sunday to Monday, moon moves into your 11th, sun moves into your 11th house, which it rules. And so that brings a great dignity to the sun. And then the sun and Venus are going to conjoin, and you'll have a new cycle of relationships, a new energy of relationships in that cycle. That's one of the star points of the Venus cycle. So yeah, I'll talk about that in another video, but I think this is extremely good for you. Keep focusing big, long-term, Libra. Don't compromise yourself short-term, either for work or for somebody else's needs, because you need to establish a sense of stability in the foundations, emotional, psychological foundations of your life at this moment. Or it could also be quite literally about where do I live and who's living with me. And so either way, that requires a certain stability and a wee bit of selfishness at this time. So you need to pull it back just now at this lunation for this period of time and see what you realize about this, certainly the last couple of years, but this particular lunar cycle, what it's brought you over the last couple of weeks. All right, good luck with that, Libra, and I will see you in the next video. Now, can we go forward without losing our moon? Let's see. Let's see how far we get. If we go too far forward, no, we lose the moon. So I'm going to keep going backwards. Bear with me here while I retrace my steps. And so then we have, hello. So hang on. So I've lost myself here. Just a minute. We've got Libra and we want to have Leo. So I missed Leo somehow there. Let's go back to Leo. Oh, no, sorry. Virgo, I didn't mean to miss you. We want our friends. Virgo friends here. There we go. All right. So Virgo, now, whether you have the sun or the moon or the rising sign in Virgo, this is going to be in your 5th house of fun and, dare I say, enjoyment and pleasures of life. Let your hair down, Virgo. Sometimes that is difficult for you with a Capricorn in the 5th house ruled by Saturn. You often feel this kind of, again, this vague sense of guilt around doing things that are just purely for pleasure and things that don't actually make give results. So don't be that person. Don't serve everybody but yourself. Okay, so this is an opportunity for you to recognize where you might need more pleasure, where you might want to expand your creativity, where you might want to really invest more in your joy. Now, that's something you already had as a message, let's say, at the beginning of this cycle. So the 5th of July, we had a new moon in Cancer in your 11th house, thinking in terms of the future and friends and having fun out in the world. And then on the 22nd of June, we had the very first full moon in your 5th house of pleasure. So you've had a lot of time to reflect on these things. And this is where we're really looking to change. And while you figure that out, what you need, whether it be in terms of your emotional life or intimate, love life or creative life or around children, it's immediately then going to move into the 6th house of how do I work towards this? Now, of course, that's more your wheelhouse, Virgo. But with Pluto there in the sixth, you want to think that things are changing dramatically here. And so your life is changing dramatically. There can be a bigger emphasis on health and healing for the next cycle, the next lunar cycle, but certainly also for the next 20 years, right? You've got Pluto moving into the sixth. So if there are issues of health issues will always be an opportunity for you to transform. With Pluto, that's the representation of that. The difficulties through health can bring the opportunity to transform. And that you can also transform literally into a healer, because that's part of your energy with the Virgo on the first house. That's a very strong indicator for Virgo. And that can be healing in the sense of physical, emotional, psychological healing, spiritual healing. And then, of course, your ruler is Mercury in the 12th house. So there's quite a lot going on behind the scenes at this point in your life. Venus is also there. And Mercury is going to be entering in just a few days after this lunation, going to be coming into your first house. So you'll feel more comfortable. And it's also ruling your 10th. So something new and dynamic around your career at the same time as the moon goes into your 6th house of everyday work. So it can bring a lot of ambition and drive, and even a potential for something very new to come in. And this is especially true because we have Mars starting in the 1st degree of Gemini at the time of this lunation. And it's going to be conjoining Jupiter, which is a year, a little bit more than a year, in your 10th house of your vocation and your how you show up in the world and what you do in the world, the career in general, but also your social status, ambition, drive, and so on, your reputation. Mars is going to meet up with Jupiter in the middle of August. And at that same time, a couple of days later, Jupiter will be squaring Saturn in your 7th house. So partnerships, important relationships, how you show up in partnerships, these are all being tested, let's say, in a way that requires adjustment. Pluto is trining Mars from your 6th to your 10th. So this might even be that you're starting to think, I need to change jobs, or I need to change what I do, my career. You know, we've got Uranus in the 9th that has, over the last sort of 6.5, 7 years, really had you questioning, what am I here for? What's my life all about? And when Uranus moves into your 10th house, I can promise you it's all change. When you have that shift from the 9th to the 10th, Uranus will change the work that you do, at the very least, the location, but I should think it's actually going to be a different kind of work that you're doing, that you show up in a new way. Uranus in the 10th, even Uranus in the 9th is changing you in a big way in terms of how you feel your skills and talents should be used out in the world. And now, especially with Mars in the 10th, you really start to feel this ambition and drive. So just be careful, don't piss off the boss if you are working in that way, and use that energy for your personal growth and development. So when Mercury moves into your 1st house, that becomes very, very easy. And then Venus, of course, follows a couple of weeks later. So a really nice time for Virgo rising, especially, but also the sun and the moon. So I think that's it for Virgo. That's the essence of what I wanted to say. So make the best of that, and I will see you in the next video. We're going to continue our journey backwards, and we'll get to Leo now. And Leo, this is happening in your 6th house of work. Again, you're one of those signs that has been transformed quite considerably because of Uranus and all the activity around Uranus lately in your 10th house. And that's, again, a very, very strong signature for a big change in terms of your social status, how you show up, your ambitions and drives, the things that you want to do out in the world, your reputation as well. We have the moon moving right over Pluto, and then your ruler, the sun, moving into your sign, your 1st house for Leo rising, especially in opposition to that Pluto right after this full moon. And so there's going to be some edginess, there's going to be some desire for change, there's going to be a desire to recognize the need to either show up differently in partnerships or smooth some rough edges that may have been building up in a period of tension. That can be within social groups in general, or the dynamics around friendships, or how you connect. This can be around politics or around groups that you affiliate with because of religious or spiritual or even just like hobby orientations. So it's not necessarily only very intimate friendships, but Pluto in your 7th house will be absolutely transforming those. So it's a bit of both. Something really significant is happening here. This might be also for some of you around how you work with people, because you've got the South Node in your 3rd house of commerce and how you connect with people in terms of communicating with them. And the Sun was squaring the nodal axis in the last couple of weeks. And so pretty much at the time of the new moon around the 5th, your ruler is the Sun. So always take a look at what the Sun is doing, wherever it is, and how it's being aspected by other planets. So that's teaching you something about yourself as well, in a metaphorical way, let's say. And so that square to the nodes is a feeling of a new direction. And the 12th house is about what you are understanding from an intimate place or from a place of unconscious awareness. And this can have something to do with health potentially as well. This may be something about your health. Usually, especially with the Leo rising, there's not usually health issues unless your sun itself is not in good dignity. Like, for example, if it's in the 7th in Aquarius, there may be some health challenges. Yeah, I think that's it for now, Leo. So think big, think in terms of a sense of how am I going to understand this new cycle of awareness around myself, around my growth, how I'm connecting with people intimately and in my business connections. It's at this moment you have to rely on yourself because Saturn is in your 8th. So at this particular time with Saturn going through the 8th house, you don't get a lot of help from other people. You really have to kind of figure this out yourself. And that's good. You get a certain amount of toughening up there, and that can also include an emotional or psychological toughening up, which can be very constructive. So I wish you all the best at this time, and I'll see you in the next video. So Cancer, this very strongly affects you as well, sun, moon, or rising. Of course, the moon is your ruler, so you always want to look at what the moon is doing and how it's being affected by other planets. Now, here we have the moon in the opposite sign of Capricorn, and it's not terribly comfortable in Capricorn because it's difficult to emote. It's difficult to get into that intimacy or the sense of deeper connection that water signs want. So the Cancer, being a water sign, wants a deeper intimate connection, wants a deeper understanding, more of an emotional bond. And the moon in Capricorn is very practical. It'll get stuff done. It'll pays the mortgage, puts the meal on the table, does all the important things. It's there, absolutely, but not necessarily emotionally. And so this may be something that you realize in terms of how relationships are for you. Where is the disconnect in relationships? Where can be the challenge in relationships, and where might there be some emotionality around relationships in general of all kinds, but especially one-on-one types, or relationships if you work with business partners or clients, that can also be that too. And then it goes straight into a conjunction with Pluto, which creates an opposition right away as the sun moves into your 2nd house of money and the moon Pluto moves into your 8th house. So there can be something here about money, issues around money, or a new source of income or new realization around something to do with money, because we also have Venus and Mercury in your 2nd house of income and possessions and your value, your personal values as well, based on maybe a tension with shared values or values that come from others. And the 2nd house is also family as well. So whatever supports you, it does look like there's an enormous amount of support for you at this time, and also very healthy support in terms of income, even though we have Mars and Jupiter both in your 12th house of loss and letting go. Now, loss and letting go can mean in many different ways. That can be around issues of finance, potentially. It can also be around people that you have to let go, and that can be in a way of like a social letting go, as Uranus is in the 11th, and there are big changes around your social connecting, how you connect socially. But it can also be something to do with a deeper letting go, the final goodbyes that we need to make at certain stages in our lives, with Pluto going through the 8th and Mars in the 12th. Mars and Jupiter will be conjoined in the middle of August. Jupiter rules your 9th house, and Saturn is up there in the 9th house. Saturn rules your house of relationship and your house of intimacy and shared resources and deeper psychological or emotional intimacy as well. And so Saturn is going to be squaring that Jupiter. So there's going to be something here that changes the direction of your life, that brings new awareness to the direction of your life. You will have had inklings of this already, as Jupiter's going in the 12th and Saturn has been in the 9th now for a year and a half. But now it's creating this Jupiter is very recent. It's only since May, and it's creating this need for you to go deeper emotionally, psychologically, and especially spiritually. This can also be around having to change residence. That can be especially so because the South Node is in your fourth. Fourth house is very important for Cancer. It's about what brings you stability, what brings you a feeling of comfort and security. And with that fourth house South Node, you're changing whatever that means to you, whatever home means to you. Your relationship to home is changing this year until January. And so then you're going to have something to reflect on, I think, in these weeks ahead, in the month of August, particularly as we go through this next lunar cycle, where you start to reflect on things. So already now, begin with the moon being in your 7th house, reflecting on how you're connecting emotionally with people. Are you getting what you need from people? Are the people in your life the ones that you want? And that's particularly strong with that Uranus in the 11th. Am I going in the right direction with the people in my life? Am I also ready to go in a new direction? Cancer is a cardinal sign, so you often can react quickly, and you certainly are with the North Node in the 10th being asked to go in a new direction. So this is a time where you can contemplate what that might look like, and work ideally before the weekend or at least over the weekend to try and understand this, because as the moon shifts very quickly out of your 7th and towards Pluto, it'll perfect the conjunction on Sunday night till Monday. So that is a big emotional impact and something to really reflect on, as both Pluto and the moon are going to be in a trine to Mars in your 12th. So, and both sextiling Neptune. So lots on your plate in that way that is really intimate for Cancer, just like you like it, Cancer. And then, of course, we'll talk later on when Mars moves into your 1st house and 2nd house over the next few months, as of September, which may be not so comfortable, but very dynamic for your career. All right, so make the best of that, Cancer, and good luck with that, and I'll see you in the next video. And Gemini, we have this full moon happening in your 8th house of shared resources and how you connect with others intimately, emotionally, and so on. And here we have also the tie-in with your sign very personally, because Mars has just entered into Gemini, especially so for Gemini ascendant, but also applies to Sun and Moon as well in Gemini. So we have the Sun in the house of money, and Pluto in the 9th house of your future, your vision for your sense of purpose in life, the higher vision for your life, and the moon itself trying to understand something really deep about where you are in this moment, maybe around relationships in general. Pluto will be conjoined by the moon really soon after this lunation, so just a couple of hours afterwards. Pluto is conjoined by the moon, and in both of them then oppose the sun. They continue the opposition to the sun. So the full moon itself is an extended opposition with Pluto and the sun that perfects as the sun moves into Leo the day after this full moon. So there's a lot going on in that house of money, the house of family, the house of your resources, but also the 3rd house of your communications and exchanges of all kinds. And that's also potentially around travel. You have Uranus in the 12th, Pluto moving into the 9th, the moon in the 9th loves to travel, and the sun in the 3rd, where you already have Venus and Mercury. So there's going to be a lot of dynamism around your ruler Mercury in the 3rd, a lot of dynamism around all of these mercurial Gemini type things. So you're going to be a very busy little beaver and also perhaps doing actual traveling, moving around, traveling, probably more short term, and traveling for work, traveling for connection with people, I would say. So Gemini, this is a big moment for you. I did a video 2 years ago already, when Mars went through your sign. Do you remember that? If you've been paying attention, you would remember, because you would have felt it for sure, with Mars going through Gemini from August of 2022 until March of 2023. And so reflect back on that time. If you didn't hear the introduction to this video, please go back and listen, because I spoke quite a bit about that and how it ties in to this moment in time, not just this lunation, but this moment in time. There's something quite significant here. So yeah, Gemini, you're all vim and vigor at this time, and you should make the most of that. With Saturn and Neptune in your 10th, you have an opportunity to really seize something new in your house of reputation and career and your vocation, your social status. And in 2025, that all moves into your 11th house of the future. So changing a lot of the dynamics around whatever the North Node has been bringing in for you, with the North Node in Aries all this time. So there, I'll leave it at that. And do go back and listen to the introduction if you haven't already, and you'll get a lot more information about what I've been describing here. And then finally, we've got Taurus, and this is for Sun, Moon, and Rising in Taurus. And so here we're looking at position of the ninth house. The Moon in the ninth is all about exploration and discovery and understanding new people, new horizons, new ideas, connecting with a vision for yourself, connecting with the sense of what I want out of my life. And as the moon moves through the ninth house, it's not only going to be continuing its opposition to the sun, but also colliding with Pluto in your 10th. So do listen to the introduction, because this has a lot to do with the angles of your chart, the career point, or the very important aspects of what changes us in the world outside, or how the worldly changes affect us personally. And for Taurus, that's been a big story for you for a long time. And your ruler Venus is in your 4th house, so something here also ties in where you live and what you need to feel secure at this time, what you might want to understand emotionally, psychologically, or even materially about your own security. That's a big life quest for Taurus, but that Taurus and Scorpio axis is all about finding trust and security, emotional and material security. And so Venus is there highlighting that, your ruler, highlighting that right now. And then soon after, just hours after this lunation, the sun moves into your 4th house. And so that's in a square to your 1st house. So there's going to be something now you're focusing on in a more intense way, especially through the month of August, as the sun begins this cycle, this first quarter moon, let's say, of or the last quarter moon rather of this lunation, let's say the last week or 10 days or so of July, where the sun is focusing a lot of your attention on the 4th house, while Pluto keeps the attention on the 10th. And then the moon itself will be moving into your 12th house, where the North Node is, by the first week afterwards, so about the 28th, 28th, 29th of July. And that will then flip over towards the end of July into the moon moving into your 1st house. So look for what's going on right now as a way of gauging what needs to change, and you'll find what needs to be dealt with in terms of your participation, what you need to do as the moon enters your sign at the end of July. And that's especially important because the moon is exalted in Taurus. It's your exaltation ruler. And so it's a helpful thing to keep track of, as well as Venus. So you do have Mars and Jupiter in your 2nd house, about family, connections with family. The sun itself is in your 3rd house of siblings and extended family. So there may be something going on there as well. Mercury is in your 4th and ruling your 2nd house. So there's perhaps a lot of issues around money and how you share money, around family orientation, oriented issues. And then Mars and Jupiter conjoin in your 2nd house, and they'll be squaring your 11th, where Saturn will be squaring Jupiter in the middle of August. And so that's going to tie in your house of money, the 2 houses of money for you. So something to do with the gains that you have from what you do in the world, or relationships around friendships and the vision that you might have for the future, your hopes and dreams for the future. But also issues around the values and the values, your own self-worth and values, and also the valuables that you have. And so something there might require an adjustment. So you're putting a lot of thought on the second house issues for now. Right. So Taurus, do go back and listen to the beginning, because I think you can also glean quite a lot more information about the cycles that we're in the last couple of years and how that is affecting how this lunation, let's say, fits into that. Okay. So I'm going to leave it there, and I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.